This is a big one. This is Taisei with Taisei Discovers. I am here respectfully with the owner and founder of Adelsheim Vineyards here in the Willamette Valley in Oregon. This is part of the Chehalem appellation, and I am actually with the man here in person, David Adelsheim. Nice to meet you, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I'd love to start by pouring you a glass of your wine. And right here we have the Adelsheim Pinot Noir. This is 2022 vintage, and this is breaking ground. Can you just explain to me what breaking ground means?
That's my brother Taisei. I'm Kenji. Together, we're bringing you the future of wine. Join us as we discover vineyards, wineries, flavors, countries, and most importantly, the innovators who are redefining the wine industry. There's a story in every sip. There's a journey in every bottle. Our goal is to bridge the gap between the traditional culture and the emerging future of wine, breaking all kinds of stereotypes along the way. And if you want us to try your wine here in one of our blind tastings, or you want us to visit your vineyard, fill out the contact form in the description below. Thank you.
Well, what you do is you take a really big firecracker and you dig a hole.
Okay.
And once you've backed far away, you set it off. And then you pour the Pinot Noir in that, and it ages for 6 months in the hole.
Wow.
And then afterward, you bottle it, and then throw it up.
And that, my friend, is how we break ground. Adelsheim style. You've heard it first. And I even like that very genuine laugh you just did there. We caught it on the mic. Anyway, I'd love to cheers with you, my friend. And talk about a little bit of who you are.
You got a drink when you...
I will. You're right. And eye contact. One more time. I want to break some ground right now.
That's pretty good, huh?
It's wonderful. You know what?
Breaking ground, to your point.
Okay.
Breaking ground is a name we made up because we wanted to distinguish this from our regular Willamette Pinot, because this is basically a selection of some of our best blocks, obviously a barrel selection. It's a wine that Gina puts together every year, but because she's gotten better and better at the whole process, these wines are just phenomenally good at this point. They aren't meant as single vineyards, they're meant as a representation of the vintage from the Chehalem Mountains. Because of our role in the Chehalem Mountains, we've called it breaking ground.
Okay, so I'm curious, how much of a role do you have in the final product nowadays? Or
Nowadays, very little. I mean, I was really the winemaker from 78 to 87. I slowly worked my way out of it. Obviously, over a long period, I was involved in decisions, but ultimately, particularly, although you called me the owner of the winery, I'm not really the owner anymore.
Okay.
And the role that I have with the winery now is more distant than being hands-on in winemaking. It's more telling the story from the beginning to today and into the future. And in a sense, it's important to get that correct, because starting a winery in the 70s in Oregon was not like starting a winery today, where you build a winery and you buy some grapes until your grapes are ready, or you don't even never grow your own grapes. I mean, there are all sorts of ways to have something called a winery. When we started, the first thing you needed to do was to buy a piece of property, because there were no grapes anywhere. You bought the piece of property, you planted grapes, you waited until you had grapes coming off that property, and then you started making wine. And because we were so far away from the world of wine as it existed in those days, we in essence, and on top of that, we were all broke. In essence, we were doing it by trial and error, and we made some lovely wines and then some less spectacular wines.
So what gave you the vision at that time where there were no other grapes, nobody else growing
Well,
wine?
no, I mean, we were not the first. I mean,
Okay,
obviously, David Lett and Chuck Corey started things off in 65, 66. We came along 5 years later in 71. So we could look to them and to Dick Erath and the Ponzis and a couple of other people that had planted in between. So we were not inventing this out of thin air. We could look to Chuck Corey's thesis on why grapes should be planted where they just barely ripen, and all these kinds of things. What I think the contribution that we made was more about continuing to remember that this is a group discussion, that we need to talk about this with our neighbors, we need to figure out how to include our neighbors.
Yes.
Because our strength in the Willamette Valley is that we have everybody on the same team working together, making decisions about things, learning together actually is the thing that we do the most and the thing that's the most important. We have maps, we have discussions of soil, we have information that an area that is not even 60 years old shouldn't have. And we have it because people were willing to share and push the envelope in knowledge, bringing us all along. And we led the conversation sometimes, but it was often somebody else. It was a process of figuring out what is possible and what can we do next to move things forward. And there is literally no winery in Oregon that can say they did it themselves.
Okay, I love that. It's a sense of community. And I think that there's a lot of other wine regions and actually just communities in the world that could learn from the ecosystem that you have here in the Willamette Valley. Yeah. Absolutely wonderful.
We started from scratch. I mean, literally there was no wine industry that we could build on. And in a lot of respects, that was a disadvantage. I mean, we were literally trying to figure out how far apart the vines should be, what varieties to, I mean, everything. But it also meant, again, because everybody was broke, so nobody could go out and hire a consultant or do something like that. We were all dependent on each other for the next piece of progress. And it's very difficult for an established wine region to decide that they want to be collaborative.
Yes.
Because all their history, they've been secretive. We do things our way and we're not going to share. It's a secret.
Yeah.
We're not going to share that.
Yeah.
And it's sad because it keeps regions where they were, and it's much more difficult to move to the next place that they could be.
Well, you know, talking about this valley's inception, can you share with us one of your fondest memories when you started out with your pick and your axe, laying the asphalt for generations to come?
Yeah, it wasn't an axe, but I mean, a good illustration, we planted the first like 8 acres of grapes, Riesling, then Chardonnay, then Pinot, going from our house out to the corner. And that was great. We picked the worst month of the year to plant, and that was a basic mistake.
Okay.
August. Don't plant grapes in August.
Okay.
The next spring, new season. Well, we didn't really have a lot of equipment. And we didn't really understand that little vines that were about this tall, because we planted them in August, weren't going to just take off and really take over the universe. Particularly surrounded by weeds, so you couldn't even find them. I think we were done with the Riesling by the time Chuck Corey showed up at our house and said, "What the fuck are you doing?" And he said, "Okay, I'm bringing my team over here. We're going to get these weeds." And he literally brought his team of workers over on a Saturday morning and went through and hand weeded everything that we had not gotten to. I'm sure I never saw a bill. he was insistent that we were screwing up so bad, and he didn't want that happening. And that's what would happen then. Would it happen today? It could. It could happen today. Hopefully people wouldn't screw up that bad, but...
I mean, I got a question. Hey, Mr. Adelsheim,
Mr.?
How old are you? Mr. Adelsheim.
Mr.?
Can I not call you Mr.? It's a
How about Dave?
term of endearment and respect. Should I say David?
Yeah, please.
Okay, David. Thank you very much. Well, so how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
81.
And you're still very spunky.
That's because I got up at 4 a.m. today. That isn't normal. I had to do a PowerPoint that I'd put off forever. Are we drinking?
Yes,
yet?
we are. Yes, we
Thank
are.
you
Let's
so
get back
much.
to that.
Yeah.
Well, the reason why I ask you what your age is because, obviously you're a man of wisdom and you have a lot of accomplishments. But I want to know what makes you get up in the morning. Now, what
Somebody's screaming at me.
is that?
Yeah, pretty much. No.
Is that Rob telling you hurry up?
Some
you got an
days it's Rob.
engagement?
Nancy can do that too. But no, I've got a way of saying yes, and then it comes due.
Okay.
This morning, that resulted in me needing to come up with a PowerPoint that went off in this direction and didn't make any sense, and I needed to figure out how to make it make sense before 10 o'clock.
Well, you're still a man that no matter what you say, whether if you go off on a tangent or if you stick to the point, people still listen. And that's for a reason.
Isn't that amazing?
It is. So you can say whatever you want.
And
people
they
respect
think
it.
and they think it's meaningful.
I'm sure it is, man, to a degree. I think they find meaning in your F-bombs and your, you know what I mean? That's riveting, I did want to address something because I feel like, I'm 40 years old.
Yep.
And a lot of my peers are not into wine. And I realize as you go,
That's a
the
good
newer
question.
generations, these guys, they got so many choices to choose from, the seltzers and the non-alcoholics and the beers and the cocktail, all that stuff, right? And because I'm so passionate about wine, I want to do my best to share the magic of it, which Pinot Camp helped a lot with. But what are your thoughts on the declining consumption of wine? And how do you remedy that?
I mean, that's the $64,000 question. How do we... we've created a complexity of wine in the world that no human being can possibly master. And most people are willing to say, so I'm going to drink my RTD. It's ready to drink right this moment. I don't have to Google it. I don't have to spend 4 hours in Wikipedia looking up how many tons per acre. Yeah. And I think ultimately we have to have faith that the intellectual challenge of wine will come to those that are willing to receive it. Is it enough? We don't know that. That's the existential question for fine wine today.
Yes.
I don't think it's our job to say, okay, we're going to stop making $50 Pinot Noir and we're going to make $5 Pinot Seltzer. So we have an audience. It's not what the wine industry is about. I think it's up to us to make friends with millennials, in essence. To bring them into our orbit, to show them the joy of comparing two wines that is very different than drinking wine because it's an alcoholic beverage.
You said it, because in America, I think that a lot of the younger ones, they look at it as just a way to get drunk.
Oh yeah, it's just another one.
A different way, right?
Yeah, and it's expensive. Why should I bother? To impress my girlfriend? Why do I need this shit?
Yeah, well, a lot of the younger ones, you look at, my grandpa drinks that stuff, and it's like $100 a bottle, and it's too expensive. I won't even drink. I don't even like it, right?
Yeah.
So that's my whole thing, is that I want to be an ambassador to the younger groups, and talking to people like you, people that pave the way for people like me in this industry. And I think just the fact that I'm so passionate about it, because I understand the magic behind it and the complexity of it. I kind of want to translate that to the younger audience in a way that would be exciting and fun for them.
Yep.
Right? And when you see a guy like me that, you know, they don't really associate or relate to the wine world,
Yep.
that's super into it, that's something that will build their curiosity. I got tattoos, I got dreads and stuff, but below that, like, well, in my heart, you know, I've built this passion for wine over the last 20 years working at Roy's, Ko'olina. I worked my way from busser to GM. I do the entire wine program that I'm very proud of, that I don't really talk about a whole lot. So now that I'm here, I'm a little bit more proud of what I do, and I want to share that with the younger generations. And by younger generations, I do mean 21 and up.
Yep.
Let's get that right. The culture of it, the way that it accents food, it's for me now a necessity with my meals. Not breakfast necessarily, but definitely dinner. I gotta have a nice glass of wine. It doesn't even have to pair. It's just something that I enjoy alongside, almost as if it's a condiment.
Yep. Pairing is kind of a side game.
Mm-hmm.
It's a passion for some people. Mm-hmm. Every now and then I get sucked into that, but mostly like what you say, I want a glass of wine with dinner. I want tonight whatever happens to be open, it's going to work with my dinner.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's important to show people drinking wine and talking about it, not just drinking it. And I think that's the difference. People, a lot of the other alcoholic beverages, people don't talk about it when they're drinking it. It's kind of, they're talking about whatever, their life, whatever's going on, but they're not really spending time with their wine and understanding it. I mean, Eugenia and I at home, dinner can be stupid sometimes. I mean, there's so many website searches going on and trying to figure out exactly where did these grapes come from again?
Food's getting cold because we're researching wine.
Oh yeah, exactly.
It's a geeky dinner.
Yeah.
But those are the type of situations that I really enjoy too. Because it's just like a basketball player talking about Michael Jordan, right? And how much he influenced their life. And for the wine world, you got that right. When I taste something that I've never tasted before, it makes me want to geek out. And what is this? Yeah. Why does it have that aroma? Why does this body look like this and it looks like this, but it tastes like this, right? Who made this? Research. And that's part of the fun part about it. You know, what I tell my guys at work is that it's important here and there to just research a wine, learn a little bit about it. And then when you can relay that story to the guest, they fall in love with the wine before they taste it.
Yeah. The wait staff has so much power. It's, when I worked as a somm, after we planted the grapes and before we had wine, it was amazing the stuff I got away with. Partly, in essence, because I was trying to teach them, but also I was trying to learn at the same time. So I buy all this stuff that I didn't have access to. Sometimes I was able to taste it. Back in those days, there was a lot of stuff that you didn't have a chance to taste, and I'd buy it, and we'd open the first bottle and kind of look at the person that bought it. They dying? How's this going? But if you're passionate about wine, you can sell it. Obviously, if your passion is based on trying to sell it because it's X number of dollars, that's not the right thing.
No, and you know what? Let's give some advice to the sommeliers and the restaurateurs out there. The amount of effort that you put into your wine program and into your staff is going to reflect the type of sales that you have. If you're chasing after money, I tell my guys this all the time, whether it's in the form of tips or salary or whatever, if you're just chasing money, you will never be happy.
No.
You know, you have to do things for the right reasons, and then the money becomes abundant in time after you put in the work in time and get that experience. You know, I was going to ask you what your favorite wine of all time is, but I think that's kind of weird. It doesn't make sense at this point in our conversation. What I want to ask you is, what is the most interesting wine that you've ever come across, whether you liked it or not?
Did you try the Malvasia today?
Yeah, yeah.
It was pretty weird. So we have these 12 families, these great families of wine, including the Torres family, and there were 4 of them, I think. And Jason Lett from Winery somewhere found this bottle of Malvasia from Torres from the 60s.
Oh.
That I didn't even try it. I just wasn't there. But Christina Torres, who's 3rd generation, 4th generation, whatever, was just amazed, and she's going to ask her mother, what year was this bottle? What do you know about this? But everybody was suddenly so excited about this amazingly old bottle of Torres wine that Jason dug out of some hole someplace.
Yeah.
And often it's that kind of thing that is so fascinating that it makes no sense whatsoever, out of left field, beyond left. I don't know what's more left than left field, but...
Ooh, so you know what? That kind of brings me to the point of a sense of place, right? And I know I've heard that maybe 5 or 6 times
Would you
in
like
Pinot
me to
Cap.
repeat it a couple of times?
Yes, please.
Yeah, sense of place. Sense of place. Yeah. Okay.
So, I mean, when you try a wine like that has been hidden away for so long, that has so much energy and so much history in it, when you take a sip of it, it can transport you to that time, almost like you're time traveling to a degree.
Yeah, it's more of a sense of time at that point. I bet. Was it really oxidized?
No, because it was, a sweet wine, so it
Yeah,
held together quite well.
Wow.
And the cork was in good shape, so
Crazy.
It was actually quite beautiful.
So it was stored correctly then, and it had a really good cork on it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But I was talking to Nancy earlier, and I remember clearly a couple of weeks back I was thinking about what was going to happen when I came to the Willamette Valley, and I've been wanting to come here for so long. Pinot Noir just happens to be my favorite varietal. I recommend it all the time on my wine list. The Pinot page is the biggest one. It's the one that I'm not lying. I'm not lying.
No, that's cool.
Well,
that's
there's maybe
cool.
5 Oregon Pinots on there, but still, that's a lot for my list. And anyway,
well, it'll adjust.
After this, it might. I'm gonna have some pushback. Like, California's gonna come and choke my neck. But I just when I sit down with it, before I came here, I haven't been to the Willamette Valley, so I've learned a lot more now. But before that, I got a sense of place by tasting the wine, by smelling the wine, the terroir, right? Learning, feeling it, the underlying acidity, the food-friendly characteristic, just everything about it, the slight funkiness that I got. So I felt like I knew Willamette Valley before I came. And that's something that I think would be good to tell the youngsters, is that, if you're not so keen on traveling, if you wanted to travel to this place, you can get a little bit of that before you actually make it out there, by trying some wine from that region, researching it a little bit, and understanding why it's special and different from other wines from other parts of the world. Which also brings me to another question for you, bro. I've been meaning to ask you this, but if not Chehalem, if not Willamette, if not even Oregon, if you weren't making wine here, where would you make wine?
Well, this week it would be in the Côte Noire of Anjou.
Oh, okay. Can you explain that to the people that don't speak that language?
Yeah, really, no kidding. I barely did. No, that's just being snotty, but my partner Eugenia has been involved with some wine projects on the Loire River. I've never been along on the ride when they were contacting people, putting wines together, etc. So we got to spend almost 2 weeks in the Loire. But the most fascinating part of the Loire was, if you think about France as a square, this northwestern corner of France is completely different than the rest of France. It's very old, 400 to 500 million years old, and the rest of France is more like 150 million years old. The rest of France is alkaline, limestone, all the things we read about. This little corner is acidic, completely different soils. I had no idea. I was shown this map and I said, holy shit. I mean, this is amazing. You can, if you're sitting in Angers, you can taste wines from the Côte Noire, or the Côte Blanc. You can taste wines from acidic soils or basic soils and compare them, and they're completely different. It was so amazing to me. Of course, I love the wines from the acidic soil because that's what I've been spending my time doing for the last time. So it was just fascinating to see these two wines side by side, and of course people that are incredibly passionate about what they do, and the world is beating away to their door at this point because people have finally discovered dry Chenin Blancs are amazing. So next, if you're looking for me, you might try the western part of the Loire next time.
You'd be causing a ruckus out there in Loire. You know, like, so I love that answer. And, you know, when it comes to...
Was it to your question, though?
Yeah, I mean...
Kind of generally.
It did answer it. It answered it good enough for me.
Oh, good. Okay.
I also wanted your opinion on some of the up-and-coming wine producers here, at home. Throughout the entire Willamette Valley, or even maybe more in the southern area. Who are a couple of producers that you're watching and respect?
In a certain sense, everybody's up and coming.
Okay.
In this sense, I'm going to actually answer your question, maybe. We'll see. But the thing that we often get saddled with as a winery is, well, you've been here forever, you're not exciting. What are you doing that's interesting? Why should we pay attention to you? We're going to pay attention to this new up-and-coming star that nobody's ever heard of, that we want to make famous, which is a noble pursuit, no question. And do I know any of them? Sure. I mean, there are all sorts of, I mean, one of the great things about the Willamette Valley is that there still are people that are just starting, that are figuring out a way, not the way we did it. They don't have to buy land. They don't have to own a winery. They can figure out a place to make wine. They can buy 2 tons of grapes and make it in somebody else's winery and get a start in selling wine and making a reputation for themselves. So it's still possible. There's still new wineries every year starting in that way. If they're making great wine, they deserve everything that we can give them. And my goal in life is to try every wine that somebody puts in front of me. But the other thing we need to remember is that a winemaker who's been making wine since 2011, let's say, like Gina Hennon, our winemaker, the stuff that she's doing right now is perhaps some of the most exciting stuff going on. Not because it's exactly the same as what she did in 2011, but because of the changes that she's brought to bear, partly as the result of climate change, but partly as a result of her philosophic vision for our wine, which is different than what she was making when she was not the full winemaker, but the associate winemaker. So the stories that need to be told are many. And it needs to be told among people who've made 2 vintages and people who've made 10 vintages and people who've made 50 vintages. Because if they're still thinking, they're exciting stories. I completely ignored his question.
I was going to call him on it.
Nobody did that to Trump last night. Jeez.
What I'm concerned with is how we get Oregon's export of 2% to 3% and 4% and 5%. How do we do that?
Oh, production.
Production.
Well, the reality is some of that is happening because warm parts of this country are growing too many grapes.
Okay.
I mean, the reality is Willamette wines, Willamette Pinot, Chardonnays, whatever, are in demand, and wines from very warm, very ripe places are in somewhat less demand.
Okay.
So people are taking grapes out. We're continuing to plant in Oregon. I mean, the Willamette Valley is never going to be a dramatic leader of the industry. I mean, Napa makes, what, 6% of the wine in California, or maybe not even that. It's a teeny amount.
Okay.
But that's the first conversation you ever have when you're talking about California.
True.
And Willamette is right after Napa. And it's not in California. It's crazy.
Interesting.
And it's not because we're not making enough wine. I mean, we're making what we can. We will make more, and we'll probably go up sometime to 3% or something, but it's never going to be 10%, just because the space is limited here. We don't make inexpensive wine here, and that's mostly because it costs more to grow grapes here to make the kinds of wines we want to be known for.
Okay.
And if you have expensive grapes, you can't make inexpensive wine.
Wow.
That's what it comes down to.
That's amazing. The insight from
No,
a mogul. David the Mogul. No? You don't like it? So you know I'm from Hawaii, right?
No, I'm not from Hawaii.
No,
I've been.
you know I'm born and raised from
Are you
Hawaii.
really?
My mother's Japanese, my father's African American. That's my full brother right there, and we're a team. We're happy to be here. If you're ever in Hawaii, you come see me.
No, Roy's was a major buyer of Willamette wines. What, 20 years ago?
Yes.
Yeah, it was a big deal. I mean, Penner Ash had all sorts. I mean, it looked. Yes, it was a big deal.
Bus that would come out every year and do tours out there. Actually, when I turned 40, I was on one of those tours many years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
We actually, all three of those wines, Adelsheim, Penner Ash, and Ken Wright are all on my list.
Oh wow.
Still.
Thank you.
Bro, I told you. Now I'm gonna get some single vineyards on there too soon. I know. You see?
I guess my question is, with your background, how would you get into wine? You were working at Roy's?
I actually owe it to my former general manager. He was somebody that sparked my interest. We had an interesting relationship, and the thing that we connected on was wine. And in my infancy, I didn't really know too much, my adolescence in terms of wine. He was somebody that had this deep passion for it, and I was always wondering, like, why? And he would, anytime I noticed, anytime I talked to him about wine, his face would light up. So because of that, I knew what kind of conversations to have with him.
What button to push.
Well, what button not to push, right? And then I knew what button to push. Yes, you're right. So, I mean, he literally started he planted the seed, and from then I just realized that there was so much art and culture behind each and every single bottle. And for me, I'm an artist at heart. I appreciate all forms of art. I do music mainly, and this translated well to wine, because each bottle is its own song. You know what I mean? That tells its own story, that came from a vision of an artist or a collective group of artists. And I think now, where I am now, 20 years of accumulated knowledge and passion and interest. I'm creating wine lists, I'm sharing it with the staff, and now it's trickling down to people. And the ones that show interest, I'll give them more effort, right? But I want to touch people on a larger scale, and I think that's what this is doing. You know, having these type of interviews. This is the third one that we've done in this 8-day trip, and each of them are very important and we're very different. But now, how we package this up and deliver it to the audience is up to us. What I want to do, my mission with it, is to just turn people on to wine and help them appreciate it more.
Well, and I think that goes back to the question about how to get millennials and Gen Z, for that matter, interested. I think it's constantly, I don't mean constantly, but repeating the story, repeating your story, but repeating the story of a bottle and why it's meaningful as opposed to just being another thing that you put in your body.
It's much more than that.
Yeah.
And that's what we got to teach them, man. And that's what social media is right now. Social media is so important. And if you don't feel that way, it's just because you haven't seen the impact.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, me and my brother are extremely active on it. This is going to be one avenue to get the younger generation to explore wine a little bit more.
Well, and
Look forward to
I mean,
that.
not everything doesn't need to be $100 bottle.
No.
I mean, you can go into your restaurant and have a glass of wine and have that experience.
Yes.
Without having to buy the
Yes.
entire bottle.
Yes.
You can buy a less expensive wine, having done the research, that overperforms what you would have normally gotten.
Yes.
I mean, there are ways into wine if you're willing to devote a little time to it. That doesn't require just dollars.
The stories behind it and the flavor profiles and then talking about it while you're eating with somebody that's passionate. There's things that I'm not passionate about, but when I see somebody that's passionate about something, there's an interest and I want to know more.
Exactly.
And that's what I want to do with wine. And you inspire me. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you
coming
so
here.
much.
It's really an honor.
I'm gonna be back. And you better not be in
Okay.
Laura Valley. I want to come see you. Okay?
You know where to stay.
Yes.
Okay. Come see us.
Okay, I will.
Okay.
I appreciate you.